Welcome to the Savage College Football Podcast. I'm your host, K.O. Wilson.
What is up, my brother? We are back at it again.
It's nice to not be running this solo for a second straight week.
I thought you did a good job last week, man. I actually listened to it on the way home from my Colorado trip in the airport.
Oh, really? Look at you, actually being a supportive co-host. How about that?
That's
Never thought
right.
I'd see the day.
Hey, I'm here for you, brother. I'm here for you, man.
Well, we had a pretty interesting weekend last week, and but first, tell us about the Colorado trip, real quick.
Oh, went on an elk hunt out in Colorado, archery elk. I was in a pretty cool valley called the Sawachi Valley between two mountain ranges, and there was elk everywhere. And on day 4, I killed a pretty nice 5-point with my bow at about 80 yards. I had been trying to kill the herd bull for like the entire hunt, and he was huge, bigger than this one. But he kind of always stayed out in the middle at like 120, 150 yards with like a huge herd of his cows. Like all he was worried about was breeding those cows. And this one was a younger one, kind of a satellite bull that was like bouncing around trying to pick up some cows on the fringes, and put about a 3-hour stalk on him, which was crazy. Like crawling under willows, crossing rivers, had to like come in the last 20 yards on my hands and knees to get behind a big cottonwood tree, and then waited about 10 minutes for him to give me a shot at 80 yards that was like broadside, and I put one right in the ribs, man. Took him down.
Well, at least it was successful. At least that 3 hours and 3.5 hours finally paid off. It would have sucked if it didn't.
That was my 4th day. I had done that every morning and every afternoon. So I was doing on average about 6 miles a day through rivers and willow thickets and stuff like that. So we put on a bunch of different stalks where they weren't successful, but that's kind of what bow hunting is. You got to put a lot of stalks on to finally get a shot on something. So it was cool. I had a great trip.
Well, that's good. That's good. I saw a picture of the one you brought down. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. 5-point, probably about a 3.5-year-old. But he's going to be good eating. Probably about 250 pounds of really good meat. So I'm having all that. At least
you're using all the meat. That's for sure.
We're using all of it. I'm turning the skin into a rug, and then I'm doing a Euro mount with the skull and the antlers for my gym. It's going to be like up behind my squat rack.
Okay, sick.
Yeah,
I didn't surprise you didn't mount the entire head.
I think if it had been bigger, like if I had killed that herd bull, I would have mounted the whole head. But it wasn't like a monstrous elk, and so I'm kind of. Those things are really expensive to do the whole head, so I decided to wait on the whole head for a bigger one. And this one, I'm just going to do the skull and the antlers, which is also a pretty cool look.
Okay, I got you. Well, while you were on your elk hunt, we had a
lot of football.
Week. We had a crazy week of football.
I know.
So there were some crazy.
Let me just give you props.
Results.
By the way. Let me give you props, okay? When you called Alabama over Georgia last week on the solo show, I was listening to that in the airport, and I was like, come on, Alabama over Georgia. And you're like, nope. You're like, Alabama is Georgia's kryptonite, and they will win. And I was very skeptical based upon the way Alabama has played against good competition, but you hit that one on the head. Ty Simpson was money, and Alabama rolled.
Yeah. We'll have a pretty in-depth conversation about that when we get to it. But the one I won't spend too much time on this one. I only really wanted to talk about this because it was the first game of week 5, because I always talk about the first game of week 5 is we had an American Conference matchup Thursday, September 25th, and East Carolina defeats Army 28-6. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, it was the first game of week 5. And, it was kind of crazy because Army this whole year has been putting up a bunch of points. I mean, they put up 38 points last week, and they put up then they defeated Kansas State the week prior, and they just got absolutely trounced by East Carolina 28-6. But East Carolina had played good competition before coming into this game. They had a 2-2 record, but their losses were to NC State and BYU, and BYU is a top 25 team, and NC State's a Power 4 team, and they played them close. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy that Army is 1-3, and their only win is over a Power 4 team in Kansas State. If I had predicted that before the season, what would you have said to me?
Yeah, that would have been very surprising to me based upon the way Army's played the last few years and how good they were last year. But it's, they don't have the same ability as a lot of schools do in terms of the NIL and the transfer portal. And so they're much more, at the whim of their recruiting success and who's actually in the program versus some of these other schools where when they get thin, they can go out and fill their roster up again.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times when people think about the American Conference, they really just think about Tulane, they think about Memphis. But after East Carolina's showing these past few weeks, and after their showing on Thursday last week, they really hoisted the colors, and their defense showed up. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the American Conference play.
The irate Pirates. East Carolina used to be, up until the last 8 to 10 years, was a pretty good program. When I was at South Carolina and even into the early 2000s, East Carolina was like one of those teams that could knock off anybody. And the last few years they've had a drought, but it looks like they may be having some kind of a resurgence now.
Yeah, it's always good to see that. And now let's talk about Friday, September 26th, where we had some pretty good games all around on that Friday. Let's talk about the one that caught everyone's attention. Virginia, 2-overtime victory over number 8 Florida State. Seminoles suffer their first loss of the season in Charlottesville. This is the second straight win that Virginia has over Florida State. The last time they played was in 2019. Virginia was ranked number 25, and Florida State was unranked, and Virginia won that game 31-24. They now have a winning streak over the Seminoles here, and that was a huge win for Tony Elliott and this Virginia Cavaliers football program.
Would we call that a Donnybrook? Did that qualify as a Donnybrook or not?
I think you could definitely. I think you could qualify that as a Donnybrook. It was. I don't know how much of the game you saw or if you saw the highlights, but
I saw the whole game, and Chandler Morris went off. He's a
stud.
That guy showed up big time. His legs were. He threw the ball really well too, but Florida State's inability to stop him in the run game was, in my opinion, the difference in that football game.
I was honestly really surprised that they were able to pull that win out, because despite Morris playing well and throwing for 2 touchdowns and 229 yards, and he was only 26 for 35, he threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah, he did. He turned the ball, but that's what kind of kept it close, honestly.
Yeah.
It looked, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Virginia jumped up on them 14-0 pretty quickly.
They did.
And then you were kind of looking at it going, and then Florida State came back and ran off 3 touchdowns. And when that happened, it was kind of like, okay, Virginia got lucky in the beginning. And I was kind of waiting for Florida State to just kind of go up and win by 30.
Yeah, honestly, I'm surprised that this game went to overtime, though, because it was 4th down and goal for Florida State with less than 40 seconds left in the game, and they were on the 11-yard line. And as I said, even though Thomas Castellanos didn't throw for many touchdowns, he only threw for 1. The 1 touchdown he threw was absolutely clutch. From on 4th and goal from the 11-yard line, he scrambled and he rolled out left. And I forgot who caught the pass. It might have been it was Pittman Jr. Sorry. But yeah, that diving catch was amazing. And that when that play happened, I genuinely thought that Florida State was going to come out with the win, because I thought if this game goes to overtime, I don't think Virginia is going to be able to last.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I thought overtime was going to favor FSU. And the way FSU had been playing, I thought that that they were. I agreed with you. I thought go to overtime. Florida State's more potent on offense, but again, Morris and those legs, and then Florida State somehow got in a position where they got way behind the chains and got into that fourth down situation, and they just couldn't convert it.
Yeah. And I do want to say, did you see that field storming at UVA? That was crazy.
Dude, I don't know who the receiver was.
Squirrel White.
For FSU, but I literally was worried about that guy. Like when they stormed the field, I was like, that guy may get trampled to death. Like he was in the end zone in the corner, and the minute that play ended, I mean, they bum rushed the field. It was crazy.
I mean, he's lucky that he still had all his pads and stuff on, because if he didn't, he could have gotten trampled.
It looked scary, man. It seriously looked scary. Like they went nuts.
And, I ended up seeing a picture after they stormed the field of him getting up and walking off the field and with no injuries, thankfully. But that was, dude, that was terrifying. I saw that and I was really worried for Squirrel White right there. But Florida State.
Well, it was a turnover. I was just going to say it was a turnover game, right? Like you said, Morris had 3 picks, but I think Castellanos threw 2 picks, right?
Yeah, he threw 2.
So, I mean, it was not a clean game, but I think at the end of the day, what it came down to was Morris's feet and Florida State's inability. Like every time Virginia got, like Virginia's last scoring drive before overtime, they converted 2 fourth downs, and both times they converted them were on his legs. And anytime they needed a big play, it was like Morris's feet got it for him.
The two teams combined for almost 1,000 yards. Florida State had 514. Virginia had 440. Virginia had 27 first downs. Florida State had 24. They were almost dead even in time and possession. Florida State had 28 minutes and 3 seconds. Virginia had 31 minutes, 57 seconds. And this is how you know it was a shootout, because both leading tacklers on each team were in the secondary. Earl Little Jr. had 13 tackles for Florida State, the DB. He led the team. And then safety Devin Neal had 12 tackles for Virginia, which led the team for them. So absolute shootout. But one of the things that did make me kind of root for Virginia a little bit, even though I did predict that Florida State would win this game, was that his name was John Hammond, defensive tackle for the Cavs. He was interviewed either that day or the week before or the day before the game. And he had said to the media, I was always told that I was too small to play at Florida State, so this game's a little bit personal for me. And when I heard that, I said, obviously I'm not gonna pick Virginia to win, but I thought that Virginia was gonna come out swinging and give Florida State all they could handle, and they definitely did do that. So I was happy for Hammond after giving that comment and after they pulled off that big time win.
Yeah, well, I was surprised by the game. Like I said, I did not think that Virginia was going to be able to hang with FSU, but it seems like you see that in the ACC a lot more than you see it in some of the other conferences. It seems like the top team in the ACC or one of the top teams in the ACC always gets knocked off by a team somewhere during the season that you wouldn't expect them to get knocked off by. And that was just another example of it.
Well, let's stay on the upset train here, as there was another upset that happened that Friday night as Arizona State improves to 4-1, looking real good after that upset loss to Mississippi State. And they hand number 24 TCU their first loss of the season. We thought that TCU was going to be a real deal, and they still could be, but Josh Hoover threw 2 picks and no touchdowns, 242 yards. Sam Levitt, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns. Raleek Brown, running back for the Sun Devils, 134 rushing yards. And Jordan Tyson, 8 catches, 126 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll tell you what, ever since the Sun Devils lost on the road in Starkville, they've looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think Arizona State's a team that's looked better than I expected them to look, especially after that initial loss. But that pick right there at the end, that was a big time play. And again, this is one where I thought for sure that TCU is going to find a way to make it work and find a way to win this football game based upon the way that I had seen them play earlier in the year. So if you would have put me, my money would have been on the Horned Frogs. But like you said, Arizona State's, I think they're very consistent in the way they're playing. They've got a really balanced, offensive attack. I think Leavitt, you said, threw for 291 yards. But if you look at their rushing, they also rushed for 207. So, I mean, that's, again, I know I talk about this a lot, but balance is really hard to stop. And when you've got a football team that can throw the ball effectively and run the ball effectively, that's a difficult combination.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at that final pick that Arizona State made, Hughes for the Sun Devils that got the pick, when Hoover threw that pass I think it was to the tight end, maybe it was to the receiver, but it was only that receiver, and it looked like there were 3 Sun Devils around him. That was a very poor decision in my opinion. And again, Hoover's a really good player, but it just kind of proves that everyone makes mistakes, and that was a pretty costly mistake there for TCU because a lot easier said than done, but that was not a good decision to make that throw in that aspect of the game, especially.
Yeah, he tried to push that one into coverage, and it just wasn't there. But I think that's one of the things that separates, really good football teams from pretty good football teams is when the pressure's on, and we saw a lot of overtimes this weekend, but when the pressure's on, when you're down at the end of the game, not only can you make the big throw, but can you make the right decision, right? And can you not try to push it into coverage, when it's not there and find, a check down or find an alternate route, come off your primary route. So good job by ASU. Got to give them love. I guess we'll see as the season goes along, whether they're better than I thought they were or whether TCU isn't quite the team that I thought it was.
So let's keep the overtime talk going. This was the only other game on Friday, and we won't go over this game too much, but man, this game was certainly something because Oregon State comes into this game against Houston, who was 3-0. Oregon State was looking for their first win of the season. They jumped up to a 24-10 lead in the fourth quarter, and Houston is able to make a comeback, force overtime after blocking the game-winning field goal attempt for Oregon State. And Oregon State, after having kicking issues, because their kicker, I don't remember his name, but their kicker, he was in when he attempted the field goal to try to win the game. It was his first ever attempt in a college football game, in an FBS game, for a field goal, and it ended up getting blocked. And then because of the kicking issues on 4th down and 1 in overtime, Oregon State had the ball first. They decided not to kick it, and they decided to go for it. They got stopped in the backfield. Houston got the ball. They didn't even try to really score. After running 1 or 2 run plays, they just took a knee in the middle of the field and just kicked a field goal. And Houston, despite having a horrible start, remains unbeaten. And Oregon State falls to 0-5, still looking for their first win of the season. So it's basically a tale of 2 complete opposites there. Houston Fritz is doing a really good job there, still unbeaten, as I said. Connor Weigman, 270 passing yards, 20 for 36, 2 touchdowns. And then Oregon State's just in absolute shambles, man. It's not looking good for the Beavers as they are about to fall. They're now at 0-5, and, it'll take a miracle for them to make a bowl game at this point.
Well, Connor Weigman, proving that the hype last year was not really just a fluke, right? And so, great player. I think Houston is going to be one of the surprises. It's going to be a question of, can they stand up to the big boys when they get a shot somewhere down the road? But Oregon State looks abysmal. I don't think there's much more to say than that.
Well, I love how you said Houston could have a big shot with the boys on the road because I know we haven't really talked much about this next week, but I'll just say this, that Houston hosts number 11 Texas Tech this weekend at 7:00 on ESPN.
I guess we'll know then, right?
Yeah, I guess we will. All right, let's move into Saturday, and there's a lot of topics to talk about here for this Saturday. Which one do we want to go with first? There's a lot of discussion to be had.
Oh, geez. I mean, you want to go straight into Alabama, Georgia?
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, we can.
Or we could go Oregon, Penn State. I mean, I got lots to say there too. So.
We
it's a
remember. Let's go Oregon, Penn State. Remember 2 weeks ago when we went on that 10-minute tangent about how Penn State wasn't going to be that good and how everyone was saying, oh, this is the year Penn State's going to be good. No, they're not.
Nope.
And in the whiteout, hosting number 6 Oregon, they're down 17-10. Penn State scores a touchdown with 30 seconds left. People say, oh man, Penn State might be able to squeak this one out.
Not so fast, my friend. Not so fast.
The Penn State is overrated. The Penn State is overrated agenda stays alive as James Franklin falls to 4-21 against top 10 teams in his career.
I was just about to say, what was the stat? Was it like 5-21, 4-21? It was like, I knew it was just abysmal. Like, it's just, I mean, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, right? I think they're probably the most overrated football team in the country right now. And they can't figure out how to get it done when they play good football teams. And they had a chance to win that one, right? Even though they didn't play I mean, Drew Aller was 14 for 25. He only threw for 137 yards. He averaged 5.5 yards per throw. I mean, the only thing that saved him was Dante Moore averaged 6.4 yards per throw, But if you look at just from a total offense standpoint, I think what did Oregon had, let's see, 248 yards passing, 176 yards rushing, so over 400 yards of total offense. Penn State had 137 yards passing, 139 yards rushing. They didn't even break 300 yards of total offense, dude. Like, it was amazing that it was as close as it was.
Well, the whiteout does wonders, I guess.
Oh, by the way,
though just not enough wonders.
On game day, it was ridiculously stupid looking. Like,
that was
the white suits on game day, on college game day.
Oh yeah, I didn't watch much of college game day this past weekend, but I did see that.
Everyone was in a white suit except for your boy who had a yellow jacket on top of his white. But the rest of it was like everyone was, and I don't know. I know I've said this before, but I think game day is getting too like shticky, right? Like, they're trying a little too hard sometimes. You got really good, like, you got Herb Street, you got Saban, you got really good guys on there. Let the show speak for itself. Like, quit trying so hard. The white suits was like dumb. I thought it was dumb.
You think Nick Saban was in favor of wearing a white suit?
I'm going to say no. I
bet when they went over that, Nick Saban just kind of gave that look of disgust in the meeting, just like, what the.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like I said, I'm surprised that this game was as close as it was. And it wasn't as close as the score indicates. If you really look at the performance of the two football teams, Penn State kind of got lucky and did kind of what Penn State does lots of times, right? I mean, they were getting smoked. They put together two really good drives right towards the end of the game to even get it to overtime. I mean, it is, up until that point, they were down by 14 points. Drew Aller comes up, puts a nice drive together, throws a nice ball, and then they run that little fake reverse shovel pass for about a 30-yard touchdown to get their second score. But other than those two drives that they had to put together right at the end of the game to get them to overtime, they pretty much got their teeth kicked in most of the game.
Speaking of Drew Aller, did you by chance see the screenshot of the leaked text that he sent to this one girl at Penn State?
No, I did not. Are you breaking news? Obviously, this is not breaking news because you know about it, but What's the
Well,
story?
this is pretty like I don't really know how new this is because I don't really want to say too much about it on air just because, this is kind of like a
You want to
family
throw a guy under
friendly
the
show.
bus? Yeah.
But like basically, long story short, this girl leaks a text with Drew Aller, and she asks him, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" He goes, "I have practice till 5, then I'm free. Do you want to come over and I'll let you I'll let you fill in the blank."
Throw an interception.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do that. And then she says, "Wow, okay, you take things fast."
Wow.
And he says, "Sorry, that's just how I roll."
Well, now I'm even more glad that they got beat. Sounds like he's a pig.
It's the funniest thing because man, I don't know if you also saw this, but this was before Penn State created those drives that brought the game back to overtime, but there were chants going on in the stadium saying "Fire Franklin."
Oh, really?
Yes.
Already? Dang.
Yes.
That's kind of like a okay, so it's not the same situation, but I kind of equate it's similar. I equate the Franklin scenario at Penn State kind of with like Mark Richt at Georgia, right? Every year he wins 9, 10 football games, sometimes 11. He has gotten Penn State back to a point where they are significantly better than they were before he came there, to the point where they're competing at a national level, which they weren't doing before he came there. He's done everything other than be able to win big games on a consistent basis and take them deep, into the national championship run. So, I mean, Penn State's heads and tails better off than they were before Franklin came. But the reality of it is, when you're getting paid the way these guys are getting paid nowadays, like that buys you goodwill for a certain amount of time, and then it becomes the normal, and it becomes what everyone else expects. And when it becomes what everyone expects, then when you don't win the big games and you're not going deep, then that's when people want to cut you loose if you're not getting it done. And I think that's where they are, right?
I'd say the biggest difference between what the Mark Richt situation was at Georgia and what James Franklin's situation at Penn State is, James Franklin beats everyone he's supposed to beat, but can't win any of the big games. When Mark Richt was at Georgia, he would win some of the big games, but they would get upset by teams they shouldn't have lost to. So
yeah, that's a good
prime
point.
example. A prime example was 2013 when they lost to Auburn, because Auburn, Georgia was ranked in that game. And, Georgia should have won that game. And that was when the Jordan Hare miracle, where it was 4th down and 18. And, Nick Marshall just throws it, and complete disregard by one of the Georgia DBs. I think it was Josh Harvey Clemens, who just goes up, tries to get a pick instead of letting his other DB take care of it, who was in prime position to just knock it down. Ball tips up in the air. Auburn catches it, scores. And then, Georgia lost to a couple other teams that year. They lost to Clemson in a close game. But then, I think it was, I don't remember what year that it was. 2014 when they lost to Vanderbilt on the road. But like in those same years, Georgia would also like beat a top 10 South Carolina team back when South Carolina was still really, really good. Because I remember in 2013, they defeated South Carolina when, Jadeveon Clowney and Connor Shaw and Bruce Ellington were still there. So those were good wins. But Mark Richt would fall to teams every once in a while that he shouldn't fall to. James Franklin will beat everyone he's supposed to beat, but now it's like he can't win any games that that would be against a big time team. And now, you look at their schedule, and they're at UCLA this weekend, and they play Northwestern, and they're at Iowa. I mean, they're going to probably win. They're going to at least beat UCLA and Northwestern. I know Iowa usually gives top 10 teams trouble on the road, but I think Penn State will pull that one out. And then everyone's going to say, oh, well, maybe the game against Oregon was just a fluke. Well, then they are at Ohio State. And then we didn't really have this game much as a talking focus, as a focal talking point. But the week after they play Ohio State. They host Indiana, who looks really good right now.
Yeah, Frank Cignetti's team is potentially one of the best teams in the country. He's done an amazing job with that program.
Did you think we'd be saying that about Indiana after they made the playoff last year? A lot of people were thinking, okay, well, Indiana made the playoff last year, but they lost a bunch of guys, so that was just a one-time thing. Maybe they'll go 6-6 or 7-5.
Yeah, that's kind of what I honestly thought we'd be. I mean, because Indiana did that a few years ago, right, with the previous head coach, where they had this kind of Cinderella year, won a bunch of ball games, feel-good story, and then they fall on hard times, and 2 years later or 3 years later, he's out the door. I will say Cignetti's got a track record for building consistently good programs. So from a coaching perspective, it's not a big shock with him. But, he's built it right from the ground up. They're a really good football team, like you said. And it's going to be interesting, to see how that whole thing plays out in the Big Ten, because you've got your Ohio State, you've got Penn State, which, like you said, they lost to Oregon. So they're going to probably run the table on a lot of the rest of their games. Oregon's a really good football team. Indiana's a good football team. Penn State, I mean, the Big Ten is a strong conference this year. So it's, which I like, for a long time, it was the SEC and everybody else. And some of the changes that the Big Ten has made recently, and also I think the NIL has put the Big Ten in a position where they're actually more competitive on a national level now.
Yeah, and Indiana goes into a bye week, and the next week they're on the road against number 2 Oregon. So, and then they play Penn State a few weeks later, but they don't have Ohio State on the schedule. So honestly, even if Indiana doesn't beat Oregon or Penn State, but is competitive in both of those games, I mean, they're almost a lock to make the playoff again, as long as they win the other ones. Now, let's talk about another team that fell flat on their face. Now, I know we were going to talk about Alabama, Georgia. Before we get to that, do you want to talk about LSU and Ole Miss?
Oh, you want? Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do that. We can go that direction.
Your boy BK.
Well, what have we been saying about LSU the whole year?
They don't look amazing on offense. They look good on defense, but they're having trouble moving the ball, and they're not playing very well against teams they should be playing well against.
I mean, they're not a good offensive football team, right? I mean, they've got a great defense. We all know that, but they are really struggling on offense. And Nussmeier just does not look like he can get comfortable. Now, granted, they're not great up front. Okay. Let's just all be honest with each other about their offensive line. I know they've got some injuries, but if you look at their offensive line and if you look at how frequently Ole Miss rushed 3 guys, literally, they had a 3-man rush at least half the game, and they were getting home all the time with 3 guys rushing, which means they could drop 8 into coverage and still get pressure on Nussmeier with 3 guys. And when you're dropping 8 and you're getting pressure on the quarterback, that's a hard deal to come by. And they were ineffective running the football, so it's not like they could lean on their running game.
Yeah. And you remember that one interception that Nussmeier threw? I'm pretty sure you remember it, but he threw it into either double coverage or triple coverage, but it wasn't a good throw. And they were in Ole Miss territory. I think it was 3rd down, but they were in field goal range. And if they weren't, they were really close to it. And they could have put up 3 points on the board there, but instead Nussmeier tried to force it and threw an inaccurate pass, and it was picked. And this was the first time in a long time that I've seen LSU did not record a single sack as well on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, the part of that too is if you look at Ole Miss and what they were doing from an offensive standpoint, like I don't have the stats in front of me. Do you have that game in front of you right now or not?
Yeah, I
I
do.
was just about trying. Okay, so how many yards rushing did Ole Miss have?
They had rushing wise a total of 170.
Okay, so 170 yards rushing, 314 yards passing. But I thought so. The fact that Ole Miss was able to run the ball pretty effectively, and that was a significant like component of their offense, kept LSU from being able to just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. The other thing too is, I mean, Trinidad Chambliss is a super athlete, right? So even when LSU did get pressure on him, he's got the athletic ability to escape, and he just could kind of find a lane, tuck it, and go get 5 yards, and then get down or run out of bounds or whatever. He's not, a pocket guy that you're going to sack really easily. So, I mean, I would say if Ole Miss did not have a history of teasing me into thinking they're good and then losing to somebody crappy, I would sit here and say I think they're one of the best football teams in the country right now. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. One of the things that that's always like kind of been in my mind since, there was that one point in the early 2010s where Ole Miss had that really, really good defense. But after that, after probably 2014 or 2015, it's kind of like Ole Miss has been known, at least in my perspective, for being an offensive team and not having a very good defense. And when Lane Kiffin took over, he's brought that defense back to relevancy. They look good on defense. They look like that old early 2010s defense, that Landshark defense that they always used to talk about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, Nussmeier threw for 197 yards, and to me, this was the other story of the game, was LSU rushed for 59 yards. Nussmeier's not playing well enough, and LSU's offensive line is not good enough for them to be able to say, hey, we're just going to hang it on you, man. We're going to throw the ball all over the yard, and that's going to win us football games.
Their leading rusher had 22 yards.
Yeah. Now, I know that their starting tailback was out, but even if he had been in, based upon the way Ole Miss played on defense and based upon the way that their offensive line played, they probably would have rushed for more yards than they did, but I don't think they still would have rushed for 100 yards. And if they can't get their running game going, I mean, this is not a shock to me at all. This is what we have been saying the entire time, is that LSU has been winning on defense, and at a certain point, they're going to start running up against some teams that can score, and then they're going to be in trouble. And that's exactly what happened on Saturday against Ole Miss.
I have a question for you, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, sir.
What do you want from them? Do you want them to put up 70 points on the board to make you happy?
Well, they're going to have to put up some points on the board to make themselves happy, or they're going to keep losing.
Did you? I know you texted me about the LSU game. Did you like that picture I sent of Brian Kelly where he just pounded the board, pounded the table, and you could see he's visibly mad. He's like gritting his teeth. You can see like the veins popping out his forehead.
Was that from this game? Was that this game, or was that just a different picture you found?
That was a different picture. I think that was from I think last year when either when they lost to Southern Cal or when they got blown out by Alabama in their own stadium.
I gotcha. Yeah.
It was still funny though.
There will definitely be some veins popping. I mean, listen, have you got their schedule in front of you?
LSU's?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. So they have a bye week this weekend.
And then who do they have? What's their schedule look like after the bye week?
They host South Carolina, who looks extremely inconsistent. I don't know. I think LSU wins, but a lot of people I think are expecting LSU to blow them out. And
South Carolina?
Yeah.
Is it at South Carolina or LSU?
It's at LSU, but the time hasn't been released yet.
So depending on how South Carolina progresses, they could win that football game. So it really depends on how to me, it depends on how South Carolina plays on offense. I don't think that I think they're pretty abysmal on offense. and South Carolina has a pretty good defense. Where South Carolina's weaknesses on defense is on the D line, running the football. LSU's not very good running the football, so they stack up pretty good against LSU from a strength standpoint. Their DBs and secondary against LSU's passing game, and then if they can figure out how to keep getting Lenore Sellers going and get some running game going, I don't think like it's going to be, I think it's a toss up, but I don't think it's like, hey, that's a gimme for LSU. So who do they got after South Carolina?
After South Carolina, they're at Vanderbilt.
Okay, they could lose that one. Who do they have next?
They host Texas A&M.
I'd give that to A&M right now.
Then they're at Alabama.
Okay, I'd give that one to Alabama right now.
Then they host Arkansas, host Western Kentucky, and then they're at Oklahoma.
Okay. I mean, it's not inconceivable that they could lose 2 to 3 more games by the end of the year, that they're an 8-4, 9-3 team.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people,
if they are, Baton Rouge will not be happy. I can tell you that right now.
and then I would love to see that press conference and look at Brian Kelly.
There will be some veins popping at that point. There'll be some pressure. I mean, because don't you think? Now, obviously, they lost last week, but the conversation in Baton Rouge this whole year has been, this is a team that can compete for a national championship, right?
People were definitely thinking that going in.
Yeah. So if they end up being a 9-3 or an 8-4 team, that's going to be considered a disappointing season in Baton Rouge.
And this is just something that I want to throw out there because we're not going to spend much time talking about this, but Ole Miss has a bye week this week as well, and then they have the most random game. I guarantee you could not guess who they play.
No clue.
Washington State.
Okay.
They host Washington State in Oxford at 12:45. I don't know, but is that not like one of the most random games you could like think of?
That's pretty random. Yeah, I don't understand that one at all.
Oh boy, I can't wait to watch the huge hyped up game between Ole Miss and Washington State this weekend. Let's continue on the teams that have struggled. Let's talk about the game that I predicted correctly. Well, I predicted a bunch of games correctly last week because I predicted Oregon to beat Penn State as well. But let's talk about number 17, Alabama, at number 5, Georgia. What did I say last week? I said until I see a change, until Georgia proves they can beat Alabama on a consistent basis, or when they go in and just dominate Alabama, I will continue to pick Alabama to beat Georgia. What happened?
So when you said that, I thought, because you've been doing this ever since you were a kid, right? When you were little, you would always be like, Georgia's going to lose. And I think you used to do it just to kind of like lower your own expectations so that you didn't get disappointed. But this one seemed like it had more thought and rationale behind it. And it was a good point. What I think you had said, Georgia had lost Alabama 9 out of the last 10 times, right?
Yeah, the only time that they beat Alabama was in 2021 season, where they won the national championship, and they played each other earlier that year, and Alabama beat them.
See, I thought Georgia would win this game, but it's because I thought that they would be able to establish a running game, right? And I didn't think Alabama would be able to establish a running game. And I was kind of right. I mean, Georgia ran the ball for almost 230 yards. Alabama ran the ball for about 117 yards. So, like, I wasn't wrong on that, but I thought that would make the difference in the game, because I thought that would have a huge impact on time of possession. And I also didn't think that Alabama would have as many like big plays as they had. But when you looked at Ty Simpson, he was 24 for 38. He didn't throw an interception. He had 2 touchdowns. I don't think they had a fumble. Did they have a fumble? Did Alabama turn the ball over? No, they didn't have any fumbles.
They had
Alabama
turnover. They had a turnover on downs.
Right. So Alabama had 0 turnover, no fumbles, no interceptions. Georgia had 1 fumble and they lost it. Stockton didn't throw any interceptions. But the play of the game for Georgia, the one that just still befuddles me right now, is
I
their
know exactly what you're going to say.
4th and 1 on Alabama's, what was it, the 6?
Yeah, and they run it to Cass Jones on an outside zone.
Okay, so again, I will preface this by saying I don't like to second guess coaches. But you've got, who's your bell cow if you're Georgia?
So
who's your bell cow running back? Or was there something I'm not aware of?
So there's something you're not aware of. So
okay.
Nate Frazier, that's the starter. He was responsible for that fumble earlier in the game. But even then, Josh McCray is a power guy. He was the guy that had the game-winning touchdown against Tennessee, where he literally drove his legs and probably pushed past 3 or 4 guys and got that score. So
number
what
2,
do you
right?
want to
Isn't
do?
that McCray's number?
Yes.
McCray's number 2, right? Yeah. So why would you?
After Frazier fumbled the ball, they benched him basically the rest of the game.
That seems like a big point to make, like a big risk to make a point. Now, I know that there's probably a lot of backstory to that we're not aware of, but when you're in that situation, you give the ball to McCray, right?
Cass Jones is the third string running back.
And he probably weighs, he looks like he weighs $180. I don't know what he weighs, but he's slight. He is not built like a freight train. His legs are not he doesn't look anything like McCray, right? I mean, it's 4th and 1, dude. You run the ball in the A gap or the B gap, or the C gap. Depends on what kind of defense they're giving you, right? Whether you want to run ISO or power or whatever. But I don't love running a speed sweep type look on 4th and 1 with a guy who can't break a tackle. Now,
with how the defense looked, it would have even made sense to kick a field goal.
If you're a big outside zone team, then I don't hate running outside zone in that situation. But even outside zone, you're getting downhill at the D gap, and you got to run it with a guy that, if you're one-on-one, can run through somebody and get you 2 or 3 yards. He got one-on-one tackled. The guy stuck an arm out there and just tripped him up. He couldn't even kick through an arm tackle. And I agree with you. Why not kick the field goal? Because literally the difference in the game was 3 points.
And the defense was playing so good. Alabama did not score in the second half.
No, they didn't. It was that field goal is the difference in that football game. So I just didn't love the play call. I didn't I'm not going to question whether or not they go for it, because I kind of like going for it on 4th and 1 in certain situations, especially when you're trying to put yourself in a situation where you're going to go ahead and win. But I don't love who they gave the ball to, and I don't love the play they ran when they gave it to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, give
the ball to a guy that can kick through an arm tackle, dude. Give the ball to a guy that can break a one-on-one tackle and go get you 1 or 2 yards just by sheer will. Cass Jones is not that guy.
And even if they didn't give it to McCray, I still would have been happier with them giving it to Frazier than Cass Jones.
I agree with you. When I saw the play, I was just scratching my head. I didn't get it at all. I didn't get who got the ball, and I didn't get what they did with it.
I thought when
it seemed very un-Georgia-like to me.
I thought when Cass Jones was in the play and lined up next to Stockton, I thought to myself, okay, they're going to do a play action pass, or they're going to do a read option they're going to do a play action pass, or a quick little screen, or they're going to do a quarterback designed run or quarterback draw where Gunner just gets a yard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or slide Cash out into the flat, like kind of, ball fake it to him, sprint out, slide him into the flat, and do a high-low, between him and the tight end or something like that. So, yeah, I was like, I was a little befuddled by the whole thing. And to Alabama's credit, they looked like a much better football team than the football team that we saw early on in the year when I was like really down on Alabama. Like they look like they've gotten significantly better.
Definitely. But then again, it's also still early in the year because this happened with Alabama last year, right?
That's
looked
valid.
good
Yep.
early on, and
That's
then
valid.
they lost to Vanderbilt, they lost to Oklahoma, and they lost to I forgot who the other team was that they lost to last year, but they lost to another team and they ended up going 9-3 in the regular season, and then they lost in the ReliaQuest Bowl. So Alabama shook off that week 1 loss. Florida State has looked pretty good, so that loss doesn't look too bad if you take away the overtime loss against Virginia. But Alabama can't come in, can't be like, okay, we're back. We're gonna just strut our stuff here, because I know a lot of the times what they're thinking right now is, all right, took care of business against Georgia. Now it's time to get our revenge against Vanderbilt.
I mean,
Vanderbilt's
number 16 in the country right now, and
Vanderbilt's good.
The next 3 games they've got number 16 Vandy, number 19 Missouri, who's also a really good football team, and then number 15 Tennessee, like all in a row. And then they've got South Carolina, LSU, and Oklahoma. Like their next 6 games. Their next 6 games, everybody that they're playing is ranked in the top 20 except for South Carolina.
And South Carolina's coming off a really, really good defensive performance.
So I think they played really well against Georgia, but I'm not ready to say that they're a playoff team yet.
And it's so funny because I've literally come down to the conclusion that it is not. I don't know how every time that Kirby Smart lines up against Alabama, he gets outcoached. When it was against Nick Saban, it made sense. Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time. I mean, that makes sense. Like, the fact that we just beat Nick Saban once, I was proud of that. And yes, I was still getting frustrated that they were losing to Alabama, but it still made sense because Nick Saban was the greatest college coach to ever be on a football field. Losing to Kalen DeBoer twice. Listen to this. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say this to Clark Lee. Clark Lee has a better record against Alabama than Kirby Smart. Think about that.
Well, here's a fun fact for you. Okay. Kalen DeBoer is 16-3 against top 25 teams in his 5 FBS coaching seasons. 3-1 in 2024, 16-3 overall since this past game, back to his since he started coaching in the FBS. 16-3, bro. That's pretty strong.
That is.
So he's really good against ranked teams. They lost some games last year that they shouldn't have lost, and I think people have kind of forgotten what his record looks like and how good of a football coach he's been before he got to Alabama. Because everyone's got this expectation of, okay, this is what Alabama is. This is what they did his first year at Alabama. So everyone's kind of put Kalen DeBoer in this context of one season at Alabama. But if you look at what he did at Washington and at his previous stops before he came to Alabama, and even what he's done like overall at Alabama, he's actually done a pretty good job. It's just Alabama's got a much different expectation.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to agree with you there. I don't know what Kalen DeBoer's record is against unranked teams, but I know he has more losses against them, which is something that's kind of notable.
I will tell you.
I don't know what his exact record is though.
Against unranked teams, it's 6-3 in his first 16 games at Alabama.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
wondering
not amazing.
if
that part right there is that's the reason why people are kind of down, right? It's because that's not a, I can't remember what Saban's record was against unranked teams, but it was
Saban
good. Won when he was supposed to win, and
the only unranked matchup that I can think of that Bama lost, it was in 2007, I think, against Louisiana Monroe. And then 2021, they were on the road and they lost to Texas A&M. Texas A&M kicked a walk-off field goal to beat them. Those are the only two unranked matchups I can think of that they lost.
Here you go, bro. Saban was at Alabama from 2007 to 2023. He was 124-4 against unranked teams.
Yeah, I mean, that checks out.
So Kalen DeBoer has lost one less game against ranked teams in a season and a half. Saban lost in like 15 seasons.
He's lost 3/4 of the amount of unranked teams that Saban had lost to in 15 or 16 years, and DeBoer's only been there for a season and almost a season and a half.
That's why they're down. That's why they're down on him. Is just because that was the thing. Saban didn't lose to people he wasn't supposed to lose to, and most of the time he beat the people that even were the hard ones to beat. So that's, like I said, it's just it's hard following the GOAT, man. That guy is the GOAT. There's no.
I don't think anyone is arguing that, and if anybody is, then they need to go do some research because they don't know what they're talking about.
So is there anything else from last week before you get to? I know we're kind of I think we're creeping in on an hour, so
yeah. Okay.
Matchups.
I'll just go over a couple. I'll just talk about them real quick. Number 22 Notre Dame smokes Arkansas, causing Sam Pittman to get fired. And then
just by the way, and I know that but Notre Dame is a pretty good football team.
Oh boy, here we go.
Dude, I hate to say it, but I also think Jeremiah Love might be the best back in the country. If you look at that guy, runs with power, speed. He's got great hands out of the backfield. He rushed for 2 touchdowns, had 2 touchdowns receiving, something that I don't think anybody's done for Notre Dame in forever or maybe even ever. But Notre Dame looked pretty darn good.
I'm not sold on Notre Dame until they.
I'm not sold on them yet, too. I'm just saying I think they are a better football team than I gave them credit for 2 weeks ago. That's what I'm saying.
That I can get behind, I guess.
Okay.
Number 9, Texas A&M hosts Auburn, beats them 16-10. Aggies remain undefeated. Auburn loses their second straight. Indiana survives.
To me, A&M is still the quietest, really, really good football team in the country. That no one.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with you. They're not talking a bunch of crap, and they're not out here trying to hype themselves up. They're just taking care of business every week.
Yep. And there are, the people that know football are noticing them, but by and large, they're not a team that's getting a lot of national conversation around how good they are.
Because they are not Texas or Penn State or Ohio State. They don't have that same brand. And I think they know that.
Yep.
But they're just over here taking care of business, and they're not trying to draw a bunch of attention to themselves. They're just coming in, handling their business, and then focusing on next week.
Did you hear Mike Elko's post-game press conference?
I did not.
It was like BK Light.
BK Light? Oh no.
It was ish. It was like, yeah, it wasn't as like nuclear, but he was basically like, how come nobody's, I'm paraphrasing, right? But he's like, how come nobody's asking, how we're 5-0? How come nobody's asking like how we're one of the top ranked defenses in the SEC? How come nobody's asking about, how we're rushing for this many yards? Like he said like 3 or 4 things like that. He didn't say it as like pissed off as BK said it, but he said it, and then here's what he said. He goes, I'm not trying to be like someone else that we might be thinking of, but I'm just saying there could be more appropriate questions asked right now.
That's what he said. That's actually crazy. Taking shots at BK. That's hilarious. That's actually so funny.
It was pretty good. All right, continue on.
So number 15, Tennessee gets a huge win on the road at Mississippi State, 41-34 in overtime. Let me tell you something.
Mississippi State significantly better, a much improved football team.
I was about to say that's a big win for Tennessee. And if you still think, oh, that's not a good win, Mississippi State sucks. They've sucked the last few years. You haven't been paying attention much. Mississippi State is a lot better than they've been the last few years. Mississippi State will definitely make a bowl game. That's
Mississippi State was 4-0 going into that game.
Yeah, exactly. And they had a win over a top 25 team at the time. And Arizona State's back in the top 25 now. So that's their only loss.
No question.
Number 16, Georgia Tech survives a trap game against Wake Forest, 30-29. The Jackets were down 20-3 in the third quarter. Georgia Tech remains unbeaten.
And not that there's a direct correlation between the end result, but there could have been. So Georgia Tech got away with a blatant offsides.
Completely.
On the drive prior, when Wake Forest was moving the ball down the field on a key third down, Georgia Tech was blatantly offsides, did not call it. The officials didn't call it. It ended up being Wake ended up not getting the first down, incomplete pass, but they would have had the first down had they gotten the offside penalty, and end up having to punt back to Georgia Tech, who then comes down the field and scores to go ahead and win, like right in the last second. That penalty that one could have cost Georgia Tech a football game. That penalty
it would have. It wasn't a could have, because there were less than 2 minutes left, and Georgia Tech was out of timeouts.
Yeah, that's true. They would have had to turn the ball over for it to not, be a conversion. So that was wild right there.
That was brutal. If I'm a Wake Forest fan, I am flustered about that, because lots of times people say, "Oh, the refs cost us the game," stuff like that. That's just a normal excuse, but that is where you could actually make a legitimate case for that, because Wake Forest should have won that football game.
Yep.
Iowa State looks impressive against Arizona, winning 39-14. As I said, Indiana survives a rough road game at Iowa, 20-15. How about this? We talked about this a few weeks ago. Number 23, Illinois. You said them being a top 10 team was a gift, and I thought they would take care of business against Indiana. I was so wrong. They got blown out the water, but they bounced back and defeat number 21 Southern Cal 34-32. After a loss like that, the loss to Indiana was absolutely horrible, pathetic. That was one of the worst. That's probably one of the worst losses I've seen from a top 10 team in my life. But to their credit, they were able to regroup. They were able to put up a good win against a top 25 team to bounce back. So they're not a top 10 team, but they do deserve to be in the top 25 after that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I don't think Southern Cal is a great football team. Yes, they were ranked in the top 25. I think they're a very average football team. I think they're probably on par with Illinois. Like they're not a bad football team. They're a pretty decent football team. And so, which I think the score reflects it, right? It was a pretty close game. Illinois did a better job taking care of the football than Southern Cal did. Southern Cal had a couple key turnovers, but it was a good bounce back win for them, especially after the shellacking they took from Indiana the week prior.
Yeah. And then let me see here. South Carolina, if I didn't already mention it, defeats Kentucky 35-13. Much needed win for the Gamecocks as they have been struggling. Defense looked amazing. Forced 3 turnovers. 2 of those turnovers were a score. They had 3 rushing touchdowns, which I was not expecting to see, as South Carolina had -7 rushing yards the week before. And then get a little bit of this, a little bit of two surprise wins here. Virginia Tech wins
Also,
their
by the way,
second
Kentucky's
straight.
a really bad football team. So
Kentucky was also starting a true freshman, but
yeah, South Carolina played a lot better, but Kentucky's a bad football team. So it was a good game for them to get a little well about with.
Virginia Tech wins their second straight. The Hokies are now 2-0 since firing Brent Pry. Tech wins on the road at NC State 23-21. If you're a Tech fan, you got to be pretty happy. Ever since firing Pry, you haven't lost, especially after those horrendous showings against Vanderbilt and against Old Dominion. And I wasn't going to spend much time on this at all, but do you remember a few weeks ago when we talked about how LSU struggled against Louisiana Tech and won 23-7?
Yeah, I remember that.
Louisiana Tech is now 4-1. They have not lost another game outside of LSU as they defeated UTEP on the road 30-11. It's been a long time since Louisiana Tech made a bowl game, but they are looking like they're in prime position for that. And had to give a shout out to the Louisiana Tech football program as they invite me to collaborate on a lot of their posts. So I had to give a shout out to them as the Bulldogs are looking pretty good. So let's go over the AP top 25 real quick. Do we want to start from 25 and go to 1 or 1 to 25?
Run it down top to bottom.
So Ohio, so 1 to 25 or 25 to 1?
Why don't you start at number 1 and work your way
Okay.
down from there? Let's switch it up a little bit this week.
Okay. At number 1, Ohio State, after a 24-6 road win over over Washington. That was a tough place to play. They had to go 3 time zones away. I wasn't expecting Ohio State to score 50 points. That was a good road win there for Ohio State. And Damon Williams for Washington looks like he's going to be a pretty good quarterback and going to take the Huskies places this year. Oregon moves up to number 2 after a big win in the whiteout. Miami had a bye week. They moved down to 3. Ole Miss jumps up 9 spots into the top 4 to number 4 after beating LSU at home. Oklahoma moves up 2 spots after a bye week. And while they are missing John Mateer, Michael Hawkins will be taking the start for the Sooners this week, and they host Kent State. So unless things go terribly wrong, I don't think Oklahoma fans have to worry yet. Texas A&M moves up 3 spots to number 6. Penn State drops down to number 7 after the loss. Indiana moves up into a top 10 team as they are number 8 after the win at Iowa. Texas moves up to number 9 after the bye week. Alabama makes their way back into the top 10 as they are now number 10. Texas Tech, again, they had a bye week as well. They're number 11. Georgia falls down to number 12, just inside the playoff rankings, barely. LSU falls 9 spots to number 13. Iowa State remains at number 14 after defeating Arizona. Tennessee remains at number 15 after their overtime win over Mississippi State. Vanderbilt moves up 2 spots after putting up 55 points against Utah State. Georgia Tech, despite the surviving win against Wake Forest, I think the AP poll knows they shouldn't have won that game because they dropped down to 17. Florida State drops down 10 spots to number 18. Missouri moves up to number 19 after a 42-6 win hosting UMass. Michigan drops down 1 spot after a bye week. They're now at 20. Notre Dame moves up only 1 spot to 21 after their blowout win at Arkansas. Illinois moves up 1 spot after their miraculous win over Southern Cal. BYU moves up 2 spots to number 23 after winning 24-21 at Colorado. Virginia is in their top 25 now after a nice win against Florida State. 4-1. Great start there for the Cavs. But the thing is, you got to pay attention to Virginia. They started out their first 5 games 4-1 last year. They ended up going 5-7. So you still have a lot of work to do. Virginia still has to, make that step up and make a bowl game, as they haven't made a bowl game in a while. And then Arizona State finalizes the top 25 rankings, as they are now back in the rankings after upsetting number 24 TCU last week. So, Mr. Wilson, you want to give your thoughts on the rankings real quick before I talk about a few matchups for this week?
I think I feel pretty good about where everything is. I think, Florida State dropping 10 spots is pretty reasonable considering Virginia wasn't ranked. LSU, they're ranked 13th. I would probably argue that they're not 13th in the country, that they're not that good. But I've been saying for a long time that they're not as good as they're ranked. But I think they're somewhere in that 13 to 18 range. So that's for the first time this season, I feel like the rankings have kind of actually settled themselves out to the point where the teams are represented much more realistically as to how good they actually are versus, Penn State being a top 3 football team and LSU being in the top 5 and, teams that really looked weak on certain parts of their games and have struggled to beat certain people still being ranked, in the top 5, top 10. Like, I think the top 25 is much more realistic right now than it was the last 2 weeks.
All right. So I know, looking at the time, we are at an hour and 11 and a half minutes. So I think we should only keep going for maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah, but I think give some highlights, like kind of what are the top 2 or 3 this week that are really jumping out at you?
Yeah. Let's give a top 2 or 3 for each of us. So this one isn't really jumping out to me, and we don't have to spend much time on this, but how about Battle of the Struggle Buses, Clemson at North Carolina? What if I told you it was going to be the Battle of the Struggle Buses the year before? Would you have thought I was crazy?
Well, I hadn't bought into North Carolina yet, but I definitely wouldn't think that it would have been the struggle buses, meaning, that Clemson would be struggling the way they are right now. So.
Yeah, that game is going to be at noon in Chapel Hill. I'm going to take Clemson to win because North Carolina has not beaten actually, here's something that both of these teams have in common. Not only are they both on the struggle bus, neither of them have beaten a Power 4 team. Interesting. All right.
Clemson, did they have a bye last week?
Yeah, Clemson had a bye.
Okay, that's what I figured.
All right. Number 7, Penn State at UCLA. UCLA still hasn't won. They just lost to Northwestern 17-14. Does Penn State get this win?
Yeah, because UCLA is terrible.
Oh, you know what that means? Penn State back in the top 4.
Probably.
Number 9, Texas at Florida. Billy Napier has a hole burnt through his shorts at this point because of the hot seat he's on. And Texas doesn't look that great on the offensive side of the ball. I think Texas wins.
For you: Does Billy Napier make it through the season?
No.
I think
I'll be very surprised.
For every coach who gets spot, in the last week, Mike Gundy's gone down, and Sam Pittman's gone down. Also, I don't know. I know that we didn't talk about.
Brent Pry went down. Sean Foster.
Brent Pry went down. That's right. We didn't talk about this, but Oklahoma State, they had in the offseason given Todd Grantham a 3-year deal as the defensive coordinator at $1.5 million a year guaranteed, and he was retained with the rest of the staff when Gundy was fired, and he just got canned after this last week.
Well, they did give up 40-something points.
Yeah, but not only are they paying Gundy out, but they also have to pay Grantham out as well. So they got a almost $5 million on the DC that they got to pay out now over the next 3 years.
Good Lord.
Hope the boosters are giving some serious cash for this next hire.
How about this? This is just something really interesting that I'm looking at. So obviously, Georgia hosts Kentucky this week. Georgia is majorly favored, and I'm picking Georgia to win that game by a lot. And then you got number 16 Vanderbilt, number 10 Alabama. Would you believe it
I've got circled.
Would you believe it if I told you that tickets for number 16 Vanderbilt at number 10 Alabama, there's tickets that are almost $100 cheaper than Georgia, Kentucky?
Is it at Alabama?
Yes. Tickets for Kentucky, Georgia, tickets are as low as $140. Tickets for Vanderbilt, Alabama, tickets are as low as $47.
Wow. Yeah, that's surprising to me. I mean, I would think that one's not that's a trap game to me for Alabama, because it doesn't matter what Vanderbilt's ranked. Everyone in Alabama is expecting Alabama to roll Vandy because that's what they're supposed to do.
Especially after what Vanderbilt did to him last year.
Yep. So that's a game that, that it'll be interesting to see whether they can stay emotionally, strong and not let the win over Georgia get in their head and think that they're just going to roll in and beat Vanderbilt, which they shouldn't think that, but you never know. I mean, I think that's one of the criticisms of this football team since Saban left, is that they're not as mentally disciplined as they have been in the past. So can they, stay mentally where they need to stay and go out and execute and beat a good Vanderbilt football team this week?
What I think lots of people don't remember is that when Vanderbilt beat Alabama last season, it was the week after Alabama beat Georgia. So that's something that you really got to keep in mind. So how about this? This is a game that's really overlooked, but number 24 Virginia sitting at 4-1 on the road against 4-0 Louisville, an unbeaten ACC team. I really hope Virginia doesn't come into this game still riding off of their win over Florida State, because, you celebrated that over the weekend, but now you got to put that in the past because Louisville hasn't lost, and they're a pretty good football team. Louisville's actually favored by 7.5.
Yeah, there's a few games like that this year. This week, one of the ones that jumps out at me is the night game on Saturday night, and that's 4-0 Texas A&M against a really good 4-1 Mississippi State team at College Station.
Oh yeah, dude, that game looks good.
I mean, right now, you know what the line is on that game right now?
It says A&M is 14.5. I'm taking Mississippi State to cover that.
Yeah, if the line stays the same, I would be taking Mississippi State to cover that as well. I think that's I know A&M's good, but Mississippi State's a good football team.
And I'm not saying that I think Mississippi State will win this game, because I do think Texas A&M will come out victorious. But having a 14.5 line is pretty disrespectful. I think Mississippi State's going to use that as some fuel this week, because I would not be surprised if this was a one-score game at all.
Yeah, that's a pretty big line.
And then go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say that one that probably won't get a lot of national attention, but is a pretty big game from a national perspective, is Texas Tech at 11 right now, 4-0, going up against Houston at 4-0.
Yeah.
Saturday at 7.
We talked about that after Houston won against Oregon State. We were trying to figure out if they could go toe-to-toe with the big boys. This is going to be their first test. Yep. Connor Weigman's looked good, man. I would be, but Texas Tech actually looks like they have a good defense now. And for the longest time, Texas Tech would be looked at as the team that's just got, okay, if you can stop them on offense, you're good, because they've got an explosive offense, but their defense was abysmal. They look like they've got both of those now, because Texas Tech has looked the best they've looked on the defensive side of the ball in a very long time.
Yeah, well, not just on the defensive side of the ball, but if you look at Texas Tech from an offensive perspective, Morton is, I think, 69 for 100, 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in his first 4 games. Isn't that right? Yeah,
and what was really crazy is last week or 2 weeks ago when they played Utah, Morton left the game due to injury. They were up 10-0. The backup quarterback led to them scoring 24 more points and blowing Utah out of the water.
Yeah.
And then
how about
two more games I wanted to just mention real quick. Notre Dame welcoming in Boise State. Boise State obviously not nearly to the level of the level they were at last year when they made the playoff and they had Ashton Jeanty. But Boise State has not lost since taking that loss to South Florida. And Boise State's, again, always a good group of 5 team. They've been known for pulling off upsets. Notre Dame has been known the last few years to lose to teams they should not lose to at home. This is something to keep your eye on. I'm not trying to call out an upset or anything, but Notre Dame is favored by 19.5. I'm not saying that I don't like that line, but I would not be surprised if Boise State just makes it a game.
I mean, Boise State's always a disciplined, good football team. So that's a pretty big line. I think Notre Dame's getting a lot of credit just because of the offensive showing they've had. Even in their losses, they've scored a lot of points. So I think they're getting a lot of credit for how good they are on offense, which rightfully so. They are a good offensive football team. But like you said, that's a pretty big line when you're playing a sound, disciplined football team like Boise State. The other game to me that's going to be really interesting is number 3 Miami against Florida State, who literally dropped 10 spots because of their loss to Virginia. But
you know what
my
I'm about
question,
to say?
The answer is no before you even
The
do it.
U is back.
They're only
Is
4-0,
U
bro.
back?
I've seen the
Is
U
the
go
U back?
5-0. I've seen the U go 5-0, 6-0, and then drop 3 of their last 5 games. So I'll tell you if they're back when they're 11-0. This is my question, and we'll know this after when we talk next week. But is Florida State not as good as we thought they were, or did they severely underestimate Virginia and just not go in there ready to play and get beat in a game that they would win 5 out of 6 times? And are they a really good football team that could knock Miami off? What do you think?
I don't know, man. This is Miami's first. Well, I don't know. I mean, would you call their win against Notre Dame a big win? Because Notre Dame, I don't think, is a top 10 team. Are they a top 25 team? Sure.
I mean, they're
but
ranked
they're
number
not a top
3 in the
10 team.
country. I was going to say, is Miami like the Penn State of this week right now?
I really think, and this may sound crazy, and you might call me crazy for saying this, but a 49-12 win over South Florida might be more impressive to me than a 3-point win over an overrated Notre Dame team.
I mean, they're 4-0. This is their wins. 27-24 against Notre Dame, who better football team than I gave them credit for. 45-3 against Bethune. 49-12 against South Florida, and 26-7 against Florida. They haven't beaten anyone that's amazing yet.
But Florida State, do we think Florida State's amazing though?
No, I don't. But listen, here's the thing.
But it's on the road. It's at Doak Campbell.
Yeah. Miami's actually got a schedule that sets up really well for making a run at this thing, because after FSU, they play Louisville, Stanford, SMU, Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt, none of whom are ranked right now.
So if you look at this, this weekend is like the really toughest game they've got left on the season.
Unless one of those other teams, unless Louisville or Pitt or somebody that just really comes on and just makes a run, and but yeah, they're, from a scheduling perspective, Miami's schedule is super favorable to them making a big run and coming out of this thing, really sitting in a good position for home field advantage and the way that they line up going into the playoffs and staying ranked really highly. But I agree with you. I don't think the schedule they've played or the ways that they've won to me, they're not a number 3 football team. They're like a 9-12, somewhere in there.
Well, I guess we will figure that out pretty quick.
We'll know after they play FSU. Right now, the line is
Miami's favored, is what I saw.
Miami is favored by,
I think it's 3.5.
The line's 4.5 right now.
Okay.
I will take Florida State to cover.
Do you take them to win or just to cover?
I'm going to pick Florida State.
Really?
I think Florida State's going to win.
Not a believer in the U?
So I'm not a believer in the U. Also, if you compare who Miami has played, and then put together with the fact that Florida State has played Alabama, 2 crappy teams, East Texas A&M and Kent State, and then a decent Virginia team, I think Florida State's, like, their 2 harder games are harder than Miami's 2 harder games. Quite honestly, if you really put me to the feet to the fire on this, I think it's a coin toss. But if you're like, pick one, now that I've just looked at Miami's schedule or Florida State's schedule, I think I'm backing up on Florida State. I'm picking them to cover, but I'm not picking them to win.
Oh, wait, who does Florida State still have left to play?
No, I was looking at who they've already played. I didn't realize it. I knew they had played Alabama early on and then the Virginia, but I didn't realize their 2 middle games were so terrible. East Texas A&M and Kent State. So
yeah,
they haven't played a very difficult schedule either, and they
Yeah.
lost to a team that they shouldn't have lost to. So I'm going to give it to Miami, and I'm going to say Florida State covers.
Yes, the U.
Partially.
Oh, partially. Okay.
We'll see after next week.
All right. Well,
all right, brother. I think those
we
are the
will have
marquees.
we'll have to end it this week and end right here because in about 27 minutes I got to start my shift with 107.5 The Game.
You need to get on the air, bro.
Yes, sir. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. If you stayed here the whole time with us, glad to have Coach Eric Wilson back, and we will be back here next weekend as we've got a good week of college football coming up your way.
Yep. Hey, and if you're watching this, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, regardless of whether you're on Savage's channel or my channel, go on, give this show a rating, put a little comment in there. That helps both of our shows a bunch over on those 2 platforms. And if you're watching it on YouTube, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Appreciate y'all being here. Have a great week. Enjoy your college football.
Yes, sir. See you guys later.
See you, brother.